and this being in a separate area. That's the only thing I can think of that would cause that, but it's not much change to the base third-person map, so that should just be in any third-person thing that you start. So if you just start a third-person, like a blank third-person project, you can copy the map over. And then, like, it should have pretty much the same exact stuff. The only thing I did to change it was I added, obviously, I added the bike in. These squares should already be in the map. I added the bike in, I added this, and I extended it a little bit to have this little area back here.
Okay.
But
You didn't do anything, like you didn't tag the walls differently or anything. It's just normal.
so for the tagging on the walls, if you go here and then you just search tag when you select one, you can see that I have object wall runnable. So all the walls have object wall runnable on the tags.
Gotcha.
Yeah. The green stuff is just me extending the nav mesh to the whole area, so that the slime could be tested. But now actually, let's see if this. No, because that's BP parent enemy, so I think the slimes are the ones with the actual AI right now. So
Yeah,
this is
the slimes will
this is
kill.
nothing.
I also noticed there's no respawn unless you
Yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that was like not a broken thing, and that was
No. There's no respawn because I haven't like when testing in this mode at least, you don't really need it. You just hit escape and then play again, and it's really fast.
good.
So I hadn't had a need to put in a respawn yet. I figured that you guys can do that whenever you have that exactly nailed down how you want the respawn to work. I wasn't sure how you wanted to do it. And then this little thing right here is tagged with clamberable, which is what the tag is going to be for obviously like clambering up a wall a short amount and then hanging on as well, which you can make a separate tag for if you want an object to be like able to be hung on to. So, and yeah, that's all that this little map here has. That's different from the base one. It's not much. So, no worries on that. You should be able to easily recreate this if you need to. If not, you know, just you can get the base third person map either way.
Right. I
So,
gotcha. Cool.
yeah. I was just editing it as I needed to test different stuff, essentially. Save selected because I changed the parent enemy out of that. Okay. Are you recording and all?
Yep.
All righty. Cool. So what all exactly do you need me to go over? Because I know that you said
essentially like just run through it like you were given a tour. Just explain what the object is, what it's supposed to do, what it does now, um, and essentially like how it works to a point. You don't have to like go into the code all that much, but it's just more so like this is a feature, this is a half developed, like that kind of.
okay. Cool. So I'll start off with the doors here, which are pretty simple to get. When you walk up to it, it puts a widget on screen, which I believe that Zaki is the one that is handling that. So the widget can change to whatever he decides is the UI. This is just a placeholder widget. When you press F, it opens the doors, and the widget changed to say, "Hey, close doors instead," and then F to close the doors and all that. So this interacts the same way as the stuff over here, open and close, and it also interacts through the same system that you use to mount stuff. So you'll see it says mount or ride Abexi here, and you'll be able to jump and all that, and it works off of the same interface. So everything that implements this interface will work off of the interact button, and it's really simple to actually set up. So if you want to interact with anything, pretty much, you just implement this little interface in the blueprint, which is BPI interact. And if I go into, not enemies, if I go into, I believe that's objects, buildings, and we'll go specifically to the treehouse here. And then I'll also pull up the character just to see how that's working as well. blueprints. No, we need to go down to player and BP third person character. So there's a lot going on here. I tried to comment every chunk of code as best as I could. So hopefully if there's something that isn't like fully explained here, you guys can at least look at it and find out, oh, hey, that's doing this, that's doing that. So for the look at event here, this is what is determining if you are looking at an interactable object, and all it's doing is it's doing a line trace in front of the character, and it's saying, hey, if this implements BPI interact, then we are going to go into the interact branches and all that. If it doesn't implement the thing, then it's doing a once here to just say, hey, if you've stopped looking at it, it'll tell the last looked at actor that you've stopped looking at it, which should tell it to clear the widget from the screen and all that other good stuff. This is running off of event tick, I believe, up here. Go all the way up here. So this is running off of event tick. It's the only way I could get it to work, to my knowledge, for me to get it to work to where it will like change the widget and take the widget off screen immediately as you look away. I know event tick is not preferred by a lot of people just due to the the resources that it takes, but if you don't run too much on it, it usually is fine. So that's the only thing that's running on event tick here. And then from there, it's just setting the actor that you're looking at, and then it'll go in, and depending on the actor that you're looking at, it'll say, hey, this is what the widget needs to say, and if it's open or closed, set it from there. We have a Boolean here to tell if it's open for the doors. For the Abexi, you obviously don't need the is open Boolean, but you're just going to set up Booleans or variables depending on what you need to change the text for the widgets and all that. And when you interact with it, when you actually press F, it'll cause the interact button, like the interact event, to happen. That is showing down here. It'll make sure that there is an interact actor. If there is, it'll tell it to interact with that interact actor. To which it'll go into here and start doing all this stuff. For the doors, it'll open and close them. For the Abexi, it'll mount, and then it'll be like, hey, if you're writing the Abexi, you'll dismount, stuff like that. It's just whatever you need. That's where you're going to go through, is you're going to make sure that when these actors that you're interacting with receive event interact, you put what they need to do. So say you're doing a pickup on event interact, you're just going to say, hey, pick up item, add to inventory, remove item, remove actor from world, all that other good stuff. So the interact event is all handled pretty much streamlined. And we have a couple different events to tell the widgets, the interact widget, like, message to go away, just to hopefully cover all possible things that might happen on that end. And I believe that should pretty much handle most of the interact. If there's any specific questions later on, then that can be asked. It shouldn't be too bad to interpret and all that. The formulas here are just setting up where the line trace starts and ends. So I believe that this actually shows all the things that we probably need to go over. Jumping, it's very simple. Press space, jump. If you're on a wall, press space, and it'll launch you kind of like up and away from the wall that you're running on, and it drains your stamina. It's real simple to show. Actually, I don't think any of these are wall runnable. So, but you can see when we jump, pressing space drains the stamina. Sprinting, holding shift, drains the stamina. There is a bit of a bug, which is actually kind of hard to see right now. Let me see if I think it was on this building that was easy to see. But the stamina wheel does not fully disappear right now for when we are gaining our stamina back. And I don't quite know what the problem with that is. If I had to guess, it would have to be in, let me go, I believe it's UI, stamina bar, and then would it be in here? It's either in here or in HUD. Okay. I think it is here. Yes. So I have it set to when you reach max stamina, it'll start the stamina fade here, which is a function that's just like, hey, set the percentage that the the visibility of the stamina wheel, and for some reason it is not fully clearing on stamina fade. So I don't know what the deal is here. There's probably something that's supposed to be connected or something that needs to be added in here with the timers to fully figure out what's going on, but that is a known bug, and I figured I should at least show that for the stamina bit. Let's go with...
I know if you go in the house, there's a camera bug that I noticed.
This one?
Yeah.
What is the camera bug?
The camera started spinning in the at the
like this?
That. Yep.
Yeah, that's an issue with the lock-on specifically. Okay. So the house is testing for the lock-on for items.
Right, 1 second.
And you can see. Did you say 1 second?
Yeah, my phone rang. Hold on.
Okie dokie.
Alright, go ahead. Sorry, my phone is ringing. Nobody answered. Alright, go ahead. My phone is ringing and nobody answered.
Alright.
So I don't know.
No worries, no worries. So yeah, for the lock-on, the building will not be locked on in the final product, and I think that the issue is that you see how the camera is obviously going to follow, or it's going to snap to whatever it's supposed to be looking at here. For any item that you're going to be locking on, you're more than likely not going to be inside of the item, so that's what's causing the camera to freak out. It doesn't know where it's supposed to be looking. Because if you stand in the center, obviously it's trying to aim for the center of the object. That's the issue with that. It's just that I was using the house to test it. So you can see that the lock-on for objects is orange. The lock-on for, if I can get one of these slimes over here, the lock-on for slimes, you'll see a little bit of a red outline on them, which you can change how the outline works. It's just that there's a lot of material business going on with adding outlines and stuff, and so I did it this way because it's a lot quicker and simpler to do, but there is ways to get the outline to be a little bit more prominent, and you can obviously make it to where you can see it through walls and stuff like that. But I don't believe that you need to fix this issue here, since if you're going to be locking onto, say, a grapple point or something, that's what this is for. Any item or object that I can see you locking onto wouldn't have a point where you would go it. The grapple point might have some issues to where if you lock on and then you grapple to it, you might want to make sure that it cancels the lock on, just so it doesn't like snap your camera up to it at a weird angle, and it could cause some like motion sickness, I think, for some of the players. Mm-hmm. The lock-on works basically just by you pressing right-click, it'll lock onto it, and then if you want to make sure, like, right now we have a bug that if you right-click when there isn't another thing to lock onto in the area, it'll turn the outline off. That's a simple fix. I just didn't have the time to get around to it, and if you want to make sure that your camera stops following stuff, it'll be a middle mouse button, and it'll take your cursor away from it. Let me show for the multiple slimes here real quick. And then boom. So if you have multiple things get hit with the lock-on sphere, you can cycle through the things, and it'll try to cycle to the closest one to the player at the time. If the closest one is selected, it'll just cycle to the next one in the array. But there's an issue to where if it cycles to the next one in the array, obviously the closest one is no longer selected, so therefore it'll go back to the closest one and just cycle between the two. So that is an issue, and needs to be a little bit more, needs to be fixed a little bit. I don't think it'll be too hard of a fix. It's just mostly like, hey, if the closest one has changed rather than is the closest one selected. So I don't think it'll be too much of an issue with that. Hopefully it'll be an easy fix for the person to pick up next after it. As for the slime attacks, the slimes obviously are just following you, and then they'll attack, and then as they're in their attack animation, they have a little sphere trace on their forehead specifically, because I figured the forehead was the part making the contact with the player. That can be changed one way or the other. They do keep attacking you when you're dead. Need to cancel that out in the AI behavior tree. And another thing is that their damaging hits, as you can see when the orbs actually spawn, they hit the player multiple times with one hit. So it needs to also be coded into where they only hit once, and then the spears will stop being traced. But like I said, this is the first iteration stuff, so it got it working to a point that is at least testable and can now just be further iterated on by other developers. So let's see here. I will show the lock on real quick, which we have a different interface for. The BPI lock on will mostly work off of a specific custom trace that I made as well, which if you go into project settings, you can set up your own trace channels or your own what is it called? Is it called a trace channel? I'm pretty sure it's called a trace channel. But okay. I wasn't 100% sure. But you can see here, we have two custom trace channels. It is the lock-on channel and the combat trace. The combat trace is going to be used for any two objects that are going to be able to make contact with each other and hit each other with their moves, abilities, skills, and all that, just to make sure that, like, say, the environment, some of the environment you don't want it to be blocking, some of the environment you do. Some objects are going to be destructible, have their own health, all that other stuff. That is where the combat trace will be implemented. It's anything that is going to be hit, has HP, has a health system, is implemented into the combat, and so on and so forth. And then the lock-on system is separate from the combat system due to the fact that we also wanted the lock-on to be able to lock onto, like, grappling hooks and stuff like that. So that's where the lock-on trace is going to come from. And essentially, what we are doing with the lock-on is, let me go back into third-person character. Let's see, where's the lock-on here? Controls, interact, widgets, implement, interact. Where? Oh, I believe I put it on player controller. So I need to go get the controller instead. Nihmory controller. Yes. Okay. So the lock-on system is handled through right clicking, and then for locking on, and then middle mouse clicking for locking off. It's just the way that I decided to name them. If you guys want to change it, go ahead. For set target, what this is going to do, this is what will happen when you first are trying to lock onto anything, and it basically creates a cylinder in front of the player, and it's like, hey, anything within this cylinder we want to put into an array, and if the array is empty, don't do anything. If the array is empty, you don't want to do anything because obviously there's no targets to lock onto. If the array has any elements, you want to set all of the you set a separate array with the possible targets that you can lock onto, and then you can cycle through them with the further button presses on right mouse button. So right mouse button, all it does is if you are locked on afterwards, it'll be like, hey, find the closest one. If the closest one's already selected, find the next in the array. Which, like I said, the bug is there that if the closest one was selected before, it'll just cycle between two in the array, which obviously if you have more enemies, you don't want to be stuck with just those two. You want to be able to cycle to all of them in the possibilities. It also has an issue with if you hit a group of enemies. So I think I can actually display this here. It might be a little bit difficult, but I need to try and get two of these here. Boop. And so now we have these two selected, but if we go here, obviously the third one that came in after I did the initial trace is no longer getting locked onto, even though it should be within range. That could be solved with just another sphere trace, even when you're cycling targets, to add to do a for each loop and say, hey, if this isn't in the array, add it to the array, stuff like that. I haven't tested that yet, but that is my initial thought of how to fix this. And I believe that that's pretty much the basics for everything that needs to be known for the lock-on. The codes are obviously all found in, if you go to Nihmory content with blueprints, you'll see that the lock-on is here. I tried to make sure that everything is somewhat organized to a degree. What should we go to next? Let's go ahead and do the inventory system, because the inventory is a little... Took me a while to figure out the sorting. I'll say that much. But the inventory is pretty simple. These are just placeholder items. If you open the inventory, there's supposed to be a couple things that aren't implemented. These boxes down here are going to be the quick slots, which you can use in combat, I believe. And then the left side, from what I saw on the mock-up, was going to be a preview of the character itself. But I don't know if you still want that, because in this mode, you can kind of move around with the inventory open, sort of like Dark Souls, and obviously anything you change in here would also instantly reflect on the character. So I don't know if you still wanted the preview mode, but I kept it there just as like a block out in case you want to either put something else there, or if you still want that. Each item here is usable. You can see that as I hit use item, it'll consume it. The item effects themselves still have to be implemented, but they are being used at least. And the same with the drop items, they're all used. The equip items obviously are not implemented because just there's nothing here that really can be equipped yet, because I wasn't able to implement weapons and armor and stuff like that. And I obviously didn't get these implemented down here yet. But obviously when you equip, say, I think that's arrows, but if you were to equip this, which would be a potion, it would go down into the equip slot and then change whatever was there originally. The tabs themselves filter through the items. You can see that as we hit them, the key items here, which are 2 whistles that I made, they don't have their effects implemented, but they are under the category of key item. They will show up. If you hit ammunition, arrows will show up. If you hit it again, it'll go back. For the sorting, I have the number sorter implemented, which is sorting them by the amount that you have left in your inventory, which will obviously filter usually key items to the bottom as well. And when you hit it again, nothing really happens. I would imagine that hitting it again would kind of reverse the sort, which wouldn't be too bad to implement. You just kind of reverse the process. You do the same sorting array, and then you basically swap the items in the array. I just didn't get around to doing that. You can sort by item type, which is going to just put certain items at the top. So the key items here are first, along with ammunition, and then consumables, and then the last is materials here. And then I also have items sort by name, which obviously the names aren't on these items. I wasn't sure how you wanted to show the items in the inventory, but these are now sorted alphabetically due to the program that I have set up with it. And if you just click I, it opens and closes it, which is pretty simple. For the actual code, all of it should be found in inventory with UI. The code for the sorting will be in widget UI screen, which if you see this is the, yes. Okay, these are the buttons. These are the functions for the buttons to show and hide the different categories when you select the bigger buttons. And for the actual sorting mechanisms, they're all down here, which type sort has its own since it's a little different from the other sorts. But if you want, you can nest this function into other sorts and just bring this set sort type up. It's just dependent on how you guys want to do stuff. If we go into other sorts, we have them labeled, the sorting methods and all. And then I haven't implemented the time that you acquire an item, so therefore I couldn't sort by time acquired by the item. So hitting that will just print this string that says the time the item is acquired still needs to be set up. So that is another thing that needs to be done. As for the individual slots in the inventory, this will be edited in here, which basically has a few things. It's just got a button, the thumbnail of the image that you want to put on there, and then the quantity that is left within the stack. Now, if you wanted to put a name, you would just throw another text down here and throw it like at the top or whatever, and make it changeable in the blueprints. For the widget that pops up every time you click an item, that is going to be item options, which is pretty simple. It just pops up with these 3 buttons. It's like, hey, these are your options, and then if you click one of them, it'll do the corresponding action with it. Let's see. Is there anything in here that we need specifically? Okay, cool. So that's it for the UI there. Now for the actual items, I went through and did data assets for the items, which is just how I prefer to do item data like allocation and all that. You can do it a lot of different ways. There's tables, there's data assets, there's just making individual actors for each one. But I decided to do it through this since there is no actors that I have spawning in the game. It's real simple. All it is if you go and do PDA items here, which is primary data asset, you can input the category of the item, which will be like key items, armor, weapons, consumables, ammunition, all that stuff. And you can put that into the category. The thumbnail is obviously what will show up for inside the inventory. Max stack size is obviously the max stack size. Name of the item, and then description of the item. I didn't know if you guys wanted descriptions. I just figured I'd put it here in case further down the line you're like, oh yeah, it'd be like arrow, used for shooting, killing baddies. And then the item effects is just what happens when the item is used. For now, I believe we only have the potion effect set up, which ironically is not shown yet because we were planning on doing diegetic health representation. I don't know if that's still what you're doing, but I had the potion effect at least here to where it will heal 25% of your max health and then add that to your current health. Blah, blah, blah. What a potion normally does in games. And that should be pretty much it for items. In the categories, like I said, here's the categories that you can choose from. You can add and remove however many you want. If you're going to add a new item, all you would have to do is create a child blueprint class. No, you don't do that. You go into miscellaneous and you go to data asset. And then when you click data asset, you can choose this primary data asset, which is PDA items. And then you can just implement all the data that you want from there. And then if you want to change the item effects, that's where you do it in the item actors, which should be all that you need to know about the actual inventory system. As for the crafting, I started setting up the crafting menu, did not get anywhere further than that. The crafting menu is just, the crafting is not necessary, like, it's not really necessary to go over in this recap. So pretty much whoever is handling this afterwards, the crafting is free reign. You can delete this folder if you want. Let us go to... Let's go to the enemies for now, because we only have one enemy made, but it is probably important to go over this. So for the enemies, I have made a parent enemy here. The parent enemy is basically, it has different stuff that is here to say like, hey, when an enemy takes damage, make sure that it takes damage and all that stuff. And then it also has the hit detection function made here with nothing really put in. It has loot roll put in, but obviously you're running to implement these on a enemy to enemy basis. So when we go into BP slime enemy, you can see that hit detection is completely different. It's not an empty function. The slime actually has stuff going on here to where it checks where its forehead is and tracks it to that. If you want to do stuff like, if you want to change the hit detection, you're just going to have to go into the override function and do all that. And to make a new enemy, what you would have to do is create a child blueprint class of the parent enemy. And that's all that's going on there. The loot table hasn't been set up yet because combat has been not able to be set up yet. But essentially what I was going to do with the loot table is when an enemy dies, they drop stuff, which was what the loot roll function would also be for. So that is all that's going on there. In the tasks, we have BTT random move to, which is basically a patrol. It's like, hey, if you are not chasing a character, just move to a random point that is in your nav mesh region. So you can set up multiple nav meshes to kind of contain these enemies to certain areas of the map, which really helpful. And then for BTT attack, it's just saying, if I remember right, yes. So it's just saying, hey, when you get to the actor location and you're actually there, make sure to implement the attack function here, which the attack function will be usually going to be contained within your individual child blueprint of the enemy parents, because each attack is going to have its own stuff going on. You're probably going to want more functionality, but the slimes are real simple, so where they only have one attack. So all good stuff going on there. And that should be pretty much it for the enemy AI. There's behavior trees and all this other stuff that you can do with it to make it, work the way that you want. And there's one other thing about the slime that specifically that I'm going to show, hopefully, if I can get it, if I can remember how this stuff all works. It, I believe, is in here with blink animations. Nope. Lol. Where did I put the slime stuffs? Monsters, Quaternius, slime. Here we go. And then animation. So you'll notice that when the slime attacks, there is a noise that plays. And to get it to just do that, we have it. It's real annoying. We have it just doing a little notify here. So no matter what, you don't have to hard code this into the blueprint. If you have a notify on the actual animation montage, you can set it here. And the animation, the second notify here is for the hit detection. When this animation notify state is playing, it'll always spawn that sphere that it needs to detect the hit on the player. So that's what all this is. For some reason, I don't know what's going on here, but the slimes appear super small in this area, so it's really hard to always find them. But if we zoom in, you can see he's doing this thing. So yeah, that is all that is needed for the attacking. And I think that covers most of the stuff. I think the last thing we need to do is go over to the other map and show the hooking, which I will double check. Yes. Those were just so yeah, the crate and all this was just to check the materials. I was just checking materials to make sure they looked right because wow, this barrel does not look like when I first implemented it. Something happened here and I don't know what. But yeah, all of this stuff here is just to show how it will look when it's put into the game. So if you need to change the material instances and all that and just mess with them, they're all here. You can find them easily. They're all spread out and all that stuff. The nail is there, my favorite one. And so that yeah. So that's why all this is here. It's just to make sure that you are able to see everything for renew. So yeah. Yeah. So the main thing is that we need the player to be able to attack. That is the main thing that needs to be added right now, which I haven't added it just because the animations were really wonky on my end, which is probably just due to me not working much with animation, or at least 3D animation. Most of the stuff I've done has been 2D. So it would be mostly making sure that the animation for the player is there, and when the animation hits something, obviously you want it to deal damage or apply damage to the actor that it hits. Other than that, it's just fixing the bug with the slimes that are hitting you. But really, it's just as simple as that. If you want to add skills, obviously, for certain players and all that stuff, you would need to add the skills in. But like I said, animations is what held me back from doing that in this stage. Yeah, and being able to see health, I would say, because if you're gonna make a demo for it, you want to make sure that obviously whoever's playing it knows how much health they have to some degree. It can be a small health bar for the demo, and then change to diegetic If you guys are still dead set on that, later on. But that's all that's really needed is the player side where it actually swings and uses the different weapons to attack the enemies. Yes. We can ride the Abexi. The animations are not there for that, but I do have it set up because I remember you saying specifically that you wanted it to be able to climb steeper slopes and all that stuff with the Abexi. So the Abexi is able to climb certain things that I believe the player could not, like there. I think that the rope is able to just stop the player normally there, but it can climb it with the Abexi. You can climb the lamp with the Abexi. So that's all there. The Abexi does only have one jump right now. I wasn't sure if you wanted it to be double jump or what, but yeah, the Abexi is rideable. You can dismount, remount, and all that stuff. There is something with this map in specific where there's like an area over here where it'll randomly, it'll randomly say open doors here, and it'll for some reason open the doorway over there. No clue what that bug is. I have zero idea what could be causing that, but it is something that I noticed, and it's something that should probably need to be fixed, but I have no clue how to fix that. I don't know why it's doing it in the first place. But I am assuming it has to be something to do with the model. There might be like a little point over here that the model is for some reason has. But that's my only initial idea with it. Yeah, I did that. I did that for some of them. Yeah, so I remember the barn specifically, I recentered the pivot point. The pivot point now for all the pieces of the barn should be right around where all these like grains of like the veins of the wood kind of come together. I think that there was a similar issue with this one with the treehouse as well, which I believe I recentered to like right in front of this bed here. So I did recenter some of the pivot points. I don't know if those were the only two ones that need to be recentered, but I did notice that and ended up recentering at least these two because they were the ones that I worked with directly. Yeah. Okay. Yes. So just to clearly state, I don't know if you caught the recording at the beginning, but the map that I practiced the hooking and wall running mechanics on, for some reason did not transfer over when I zipped it. We're not quite sure why. All I can think of is like, because in my version, it's third person map that I tested it in, which is in the levels, but it's been made aware to me that that's not there. It is just a variation on the third person base map, which was here, and I moved it into levels just to have everything in one place. But the only thing I can think of is that maybe it's because the build data is here, but the level data is over here. I have no clue. But it's not hard to recreate. So let me load that up. And beautiful. What is this little buddy here? Oh, it's the post-process volume. Yeah, I never expanded that. Don't worry about the post-process volume. So for in here, we can test the hooking and stuff, which the hooking is kind of just whatever you want to hook onto right now is able to be hooked onto. If you want to change that, you can use tags, which is what I use for the wall running and clambering and all the like locomotion along different walls like Spider-Man. But yeah, right now you can just hook to anything. and it is used by the Z key. And I don't remember the key that I put on the controller, but there is every one of these mappings has a controller mapping. You can see it in the input mapping contexts, which should be under player input, and then input mapping context default. You can see all of the mappings here. You can see gamepad, face button top. Let's go to. Do I have hook? Where's hook? Oh, spirit ability is where hook is. So gamepad right trigger axis, which I believe is RT or R2 for depending on the controller that you use. And then if we go into here, this hook system is not perfect. It still needs some work. I will admit that. But right now it's basically saying, hey, if there is an object between the player and 2,500 units, which I believe adds up to 25 meters. I believe that Unreal works off of a centimeter system, so every 1 unit in length is a centimeter, so 2,500 units is 25 meters. So if there's anything between the player and where the camera is looking within 25 meters, it'll hook you to it. And basically all it's doing is it's saying, hey, get the impact point of the hook, and then with this timeline, it is pulling the player along a line towards that impact location. There is a slight bug where you can see if you jump in hook, it works pretty much as intended. But for some reason, when you stay on the ground in hook, it obviously drags you along the ground for a little bit and then pops you up. Which the thing that I can think has to be something to do with either friction values or gravity scales. That's the only thing I can think of at the moment that would cause this. But I have not thoroughly bug tested to see if that is in fact the issue that's being had. But the hook system is very rudimentary at the moment. You can obviously update it to where you can swing in arcs and stuff like that if need be. But for now, it is just bringing the player to where it needs to go, and so on and so forth. You can easily... Yeah. So if you want a visual representation of the hook right now, what I can do is for any trace that you have, any line trace, sphere trace, there's another kind of trace that I'm forgetting at the moment. If you go into, you can see here, there's a trace channel. Make sure that is visibility. You don't want it to, well, actually, no, the trace channel you don't want to move. Sorry. The trace complex is what you want to change. Maybe not. No, god dang. My brain is not working. You want to do the draw debug type. So if you do draw debug type, you can change it. If it's persistent, it'll always stay there after you've used the trace. If it's just for a duration, which is what I prefer to use, it'll stay for the draw time down here. So draw debug type is how you show the debug lines and spheres and all that stuff, like the lock-on sphere that was doing the draw debug. But if we go in here, and as you can tell, I use right click to always tab in, and it always draws the lock-on sphere. But if you do a Z, you can see it's pulling us to that point that it shot at. From there up to there. And if we do it to here, it'll even pull you along the ground. Obviously, we're colliding, so it's not going to pull you all the way along the ground. Didn't know if you wanted that to be intentional or not, but that's just the way that it works right now. I figured it kind of worked with what was going on here. And then it'll try to always aim wherever. You can see that the stamina wheel is kind of in the center of the screen. So if I do that, it'll pretty much pull straight to where that stamina wheel is set up. So that is the main gist of what's going on with the hooking mechanic. Now, the wall running mechanic has a lot going on, and actually took me like a whole day to wrap my head around because circles are hard. So basically, what this is going to do is it's going to say, hey, if you are moving a certain speed and you are falling, then it'll put you onto a wall run if the surface is wall runnable. So it's making sure to drain stamina while you're on it. It's making sure to put you in the right direction while you're on it, and all this other good stuff, as long as you are on the surface that you're wall running on. When you jump, it'll launch you a little bit up and out just to make sure that you can have moments like over here where if these two walls are close enough, you can kind of jump between the two walls and get some extra altitude. No. Okay, well, that's upsetting. And I think other than that, that's pretty much the gist of what the wall run is doing. The coding for it is a lot more complex, so if you wish to look at that, it is all under, where are we at here? Wall running loop. So for the most part, it's all under wall running loop. The start of the wall run is actually under this event hit down here. So this is just saying when a player runs into something, does it have the wall runnable tag? If so, start the wall running stuff going on here. It checks to see if it's falling, if you have more stamina, if that object is wall runnable, and if so, then it goes into wall running rotation, which at the end of wall running rotation, which is just it's setting the rotation of the character, it'll go into the wall run loop, which is over there. And this is the monumental coding that had to be thrown in here. It's not perfect. It can definitely be improved, but this is what we've got for the first iteration of it. And I tried to comment as much as possible to just tell which sections are here, so you can see, check if you meet all the conditions while running. If any of these fail, you obviously just get kicked off the wall. The gravity is set. You're no longer wall running for the Boolean, all this other stuff. And also, let's see. I believe that there is gravity scales that you can play with. I was originally doing it to where you slid down the wall if you sat still. Didn't know if you guys wanted that because you had the whole like Vine Spirit thing going on. So I kicked that out. But there's the gravity scales and stuff that you can do to make this all work perfectly how you want it to. So hopefully. Hopefully at least. And then down here is the clamber bit of the wall run, which is not working properly. So this all here is going to be deprecated whenever somebody else fixes the clamber, because this is not properly working. But the wall run and the hooks are as stated there. As for the weapon swapping, you can see that we have that here. The weapon swapping is somewhat implemented to where you can bring a wheel and collapse, like it has the flip-flop for bringing and collapsing a wheel, and it shows that you can have this option here for quick swapping. But the actual weapon wheel never was set up properly, so the weapon wheel UI, that'll be something that Zaki will have to fix. I could not get the radial menu for the weapon wheel to actually correctly work right. And then let's see here. What is the last thing that we have? The stamina gain loop it's set very high right now just for testing purposes. To fix the stamina gain, you just have to go down here. Right now I have it set to 10. All you would have to do is set this to like 0.5, 1, 2, whatever value you guys decide the stamina gain should be set to. You just set it up right there and it'll be good to go. All the movement input and camera input are based to Unreal. You can see here we have the stamina bar widget is being made and stuff like that, and is being added to a HUD. So the HUD is its own little variable here that you can add more stuff to. I didn't know if you guys wanted a separate HUD or just use the base HUD that it had, so I just had that little thing there. You can change that if you want. And the last thing that it looks like I forgot to talk about was the dodge system, which is very rudimentary right now since the combat is not completely set up. But I think that this is better shown with the slimes. So we will pop back over to the other level real quick. Okay. So let me remember which button I set this up to, because I do not remember the dodge button. Dodge is Q. Okay, cool. So the dodge button is Q. If you're standing still, it'll move you back just a little bit. You can set the impulse to be higher here. I just think that this, like, if you're moving back in armor, obviously it's not going to be too far. The dodge, if you're moving, is just going to be in the direction that your character is facing, not the camera. You can change it to the camera direction pretty easily, but this is what we have right now. And then if a character is attacking you, you can see that, boom, you can dodge backwards just out of reach of the slimes, but I don't know if it'll be far enough for the other characters that you guys set up. So for now, it's good enough for the slimes. You might want to set the impulse a little higher, just depending on, like, say if you have an armor swap, you might want the dodge to be shorter, stuff like that. But that's all the dodge system is doing, is draining stamina and allowing you to backstep out of combat. If you want to do a perfect strike or something like that, all you would have to do is have an initial dodge position when you hit Q. And basically, if the enemy hits that and then you attack after that has been hit, you can kind of set up a perfect dodge counter from that, which shouldn't be too bad. It's just another thing that, due to me not having the animations properly in, because dummy with animations, I couldn't quite test. But yeah, that should be pretty much the gist of everything that is coded in the game, I believe. There's some bits and pieces that I started coding and then couldn't quite get it to work, so moved on to other stuff. If you find any of those, feel free to move it or do whatever you want with it. I tried to separate these folders to make them pretty understandable. Obviously, all the actual coding is under blueprints, except for the actual player character, since I wanted the player character to be separate from the rest of the amalgamation of just stuff that's going to be thrown in here. Let's see. Is there anything that I'm missing? Yes. Mm-hmm. I actually just looked this up for my own purposes, for my own game that I'm making. If you're doing an advanced branching dialogue, which is definitely what this game seems to lead towards, you would do that actually through the AI tree, which is really interesting. Basically, you're going to go through an AI tree and use the blackboard to set up which dialogue node you go to, and you can also set up responses and stuff through there. As for actually like talking to a character, basically what you would do is you would have one AI tree running at the time that the character is like patrolling around doing their normal daily life, and when the player talks to them, you swap that AI tree out for the dialogue tree. So that's how you would actually go about having those more in-depth dialogue moments. And then you would also have to make a separate widget that pops up, and the text can change to match whatever each blurb is supposed to be. And then when the text changes, you can obviously have it as a key as well to play a line or two lines, however you want, of dialogue and stuff like that. So the dialogue is very interesting, in my opinion, to the fact that it uses the AI tree to kind of set up those more complex moments. But that is the way that I would go about it, at least. Mm-hmm. Granted, I will say real quick, if you want people doing specific stuff during dialogue, obviously this would not work quite as well. So if you say you wanted somebody like typing on a computer, you can have that animation still playing, but you can't have them typing on a computer and then in the middle, like, say, their AI tell them to get up and walk away, unless that is hard-coded into a dialogue bit. So there is some limitations with having it as an AI tree, but that is the initial idea that I have.
Oops. Um, well, I just want to say thank you so much for taking on this monumental task for us, doing what you've been able to, and putting the time and effort that you have into this project. It means a lot to me. I'm sure it means a lot to everybody else here. And yeah, with this, I can 100% say this is you passing the torch. I know we talked about the other devlogs and stuff.
Yes.
If you still want to do those, you can. If not, we could just use this and
All right.
be done with it. It's kind of up to you. I know you were doing a different thing towards, for the YouTube one versus the one-on-one, but again, it's up to you. I won't ask you for any more of your time if you don't have it, to give or want to give. So,
Yeah.
but
Alrighty.
thank you so much. If you need anything, obviously, you can reach out to me. Um, and,
Mhm.
you know, ideally, in some way, shape, form, or fashion, I will be able to repay you, be it, monetary or otherwise.
Of course. Don't worry about it if it puts anything like the company or the project in a rough spot. Do not worry about it. The project comes first, in my opinion.
Mm.
So make sure that the product at least gets out to people is first and foremost. So yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, Lucid.
Hmm.
Have a
Thank
good
you for
one.
having me on.
Of
You
course.
too.
Bye.
Bye.